And hello, World Wide Web. Welcome to the Hanging with Web Show live right here on Facebook Live. Tonight, we are going to be having a great discussion about a timely and important topic. We are going to be recording our Hanging with Web Show Krypton radio broadcast. We'll be joined in just a few minutes by some amazing guests and a wonderful co-host that's going to help us to really bring this topic to light. Please pardon the video quality really quick, guys. We are working out some technical issues, but we wanted to make sure we were on time with this broadcast. So, with that being said, guys, we're going to start recording the Krypton radio broadcast in about 2 or 3 minutes. In the meantime, just some quick things, some notes. I will be reading sort of a statement for the radio show when we get started. So if I'm looking down and it's not about you guys, it's more about me getting the Krypton radio broadcast just right. Okay. Real quick, I'm going to say hi to our co-host for this evening. We have another guest coming on, another panelist coming on. But you know what? Our co-host and I have had many conversations about many topics, and I'm pretty sure that if our guests don't make it into the room, he and I can keep y'all very entertained and very busy, and hopefully even y'all have gained a little bit of knowledge from tonight's broadcast. So please welcome to the screen a lifetime popular culture fan, as well as for the past 40 years almost, a pop culture host of panels and discussions, a convention staple. Please welcome to the screen from MDL Entertainment, Mr. Marc. Good day, sir.
Hey, you know, if the people did the math, they can probably figure out how old I am just by the information you just gave them.
If they really wanted to do that math, they could probably figure it out. They're all not doing math right now, though. This is a social studies course, not a math course, guys.
Yeah, thank God. Yeah.
Marc,
hey, brother.
And how are things over your way? I mean, you're back to work, I know, back at the office. So how are things going with you?
Well, I've never been affected by COVID-19 in terms of my employment. Thank God on that one. And I know there are a lot more people who were furloughed or quarantined, sequestered, whatever term you want to use. So I've been really blessed by continually working until I got orders from the CDC to stay home for 14 to 21 days through some of that span. Luckily, I only had to stay out a week. But other than that, I am doing absolutely fantastic right now.
That is awesome, man. I'm glad to hear that. Tonight's topic is going to get a little heady as soon as we start recording the Krypton radio version.
Okay.
I wanted to have you on with me and some other guests, though, because I really think that this topic is time right now. People are actually listening. Normally we listen long enough until it's our turn to talk. But right now, we're actually listening.
Yes. It's not my intention to preach, but it's really interesting how it's really unavoidable, especially in this time and day, because we've been preaching for centuries to deaf ears, and current events have brought it to the forefront. Which means we're not going to stop what we've been doing until we've basically initiated greater change than what we've achieved so far. Oops, we lost your voice there, Garrett. Yeah. It was that other screen that is connected to your audio. If Sage would put the other screen back up, I think that's where we'll hear you.
Thanks. Good. Awesome. Great. Are we back? Are we back? We should be back.
Yes.
All righty. That's good. Okay. So guys, we're going to dive right into this topic here. I'm going to go ahead. We're at 8 minutes past the hour, so I'm going to go ahead and get Dina to start the Krypton radio recording. I will give a short intro again. I'll bring Marc back up, and then we will introduce our first guest for this evening, and we'll dive right into the topic. Thank you so much. Like I said, if I'm looking down, if you're watching on Facebook, I'm actually reading something for the Krypton Radio audience. So please just hang out with us and enjoy. Please leave your remarks and your comments after we're done with the Krypton Radio broadcast recording. If my guests would like to stay on the line, I will also be staying on the line. We'll answer any questions or try to reach all of your comments in the chat room as that happens. Okay, so Dina, when you're ready. Hello, World Wide Web. Hello, Krypton Radio. Welcome to the Hanging with Web Show Radio Hour. I'm GW Pomacher, and tonight we have got a really special show for you. I am joined on the line with a co-host, Mr. Marc B. Lee of MBL Entertainment. And we are going to bring Marc up to say hello in a few minutes here. Really quick, I've got some housekeeping to do. I want to get this out of the way because I want you all to know how important, how vital, how important the discussion we're going to have tonight is to our community as artists, as pop culture enthusiasts, as fans, as creative artists. So real quick, here we go, guys. This episode will examine a set of vital and timely topics in a serious way. We want to have a serious discussion. It is important to note for all of you listening right now, that while HWWS Web TV and HWWS Media Group does value all valid opinions of all of our listeners and of all of our show personalities, we want to be very, very clear. HWWS Media Group does not and will not tolerate any hateful speech or ideas during or after or around our broadcasts. These are not opinions. Opinions are things that are held by people. They are neither right nor wrong. Hate speech, hateful ideas, and hateful ideology are not opinions. They are wrong by definition. And HWWS Media Group and all of our affiliates will not tolerate hate speech on any of our channels. That was important, guys, because tonight's topic is very clear. Science fiction and comics and science fiction and comic culture have oftentimes led the way on the page or on the screen when it comes to matters of social justice, racial equality, or just conversations about these things. Now, behind the scenes, this has not always been true, but on the page and on the screen, this is where we lead. This is where our art tells the truth of the human condition. But we've failed a few times. And we want to talk about that, and we want to put it out there. What can we do better? So tonight we brought on a panel that can talk about this from not just a theoretical perspective, which is what I'm talking from, guys. I can tell you right now, I'm talking from a lifetime of observation and study. But my guests are talking from a lifetime, period. So please welcome our co-host, a lifetime veteran of fan culture, a 30-plus year host at conventions and Comic-Cons and pop culture icon. Please welcome my co-host, Mr. Marc B. Lee. Hello, Marc. All right, good to see you again, man. It is really, really good to have you on the show tonight. You and I talk a lot offline and, in our messages and things like that about the things happening in the world. And I really thought that tonight was a good night that you and I could get together and do a show that might have some importance beyond just entertaining our audience, because we love to do that, both of us. But the world is the way it is today, and people are listening. And I thought maybe we would talk a little bit about the history and the culture that all of the things we see in the news come from. So welcome, Mr. Marc B. Lee. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself. Remember, we have the radio audience as well, so please tell them a little bit about yourself and where you come from.
I hear a little bit of echo.
You got a little echo there, so why don't we turn that down over there a little bit?
Yeah, I'm gonna testing, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, kind of still hear myself. That's okay. I'll work over it.
Not the
Yeah. All right. Well, I've been in. Well, I hail from Baltimore, Maryland, for one thing. So born, educated. I live in Orlando, Florida, or outside of Orlando, Florida, for probably the last 30 years, I think. I've been a part of. Oops. Can you guys hear me? Can you can? Okay, I can't hear myself, so that's probably okay. That's probably the way it should be. Okay, got it. I've been a part of the convention culture for the last, and you took off 10 years because when we first talked, you said I've been in it for 40. And then when you go live, you say I've been in it for 30. So I'll take it, whatever. But I'm sure it's longer than 30.
Well, I was trying not to give anybody a math quiz tonight. I know that there are some people who are going to want to know how old you are. I've dyed the gray out of my beard, and I see you wearing the hat today, so they can't see the sides. So
you know what? I don't mind letting people know that I do color my hair.
Oh, there you go. See that?
Yeah. I'm not ashamed of that at all. If women can go to the beauty salon, once a month or whatever, and get highlights and colors in their own hair, I can do the same exact thing. So that's basically what I did. So anyway, so I've been a part of the convention atmosphere, shall I say, industry even more for 35 years, maybe so. I can't even tell you the number of conventions that I've worked, but I've been either creating, hosting, moderating much of what I do now, and actually acting as auctioneer for conventions for a very, very long time, worked with a lot of celebs. As you know, Garrett, Stan Lee was probably one of the closest guys to me that I've had, or should I say closest celebrity? So I shouldn't say the closest guy. It's basically the closest celebrity that I've had, and spent a lot of time with him on stage and a lot of other events. Other than that, I design houses for a living. I design things that I can't afford. So I've been working as an architect for a very, very long time. So that's enough about me.
Outstanding. Thank you very much, Mark. Thanks for being on with us today. Our panelist here today is another fantastic creator. We met this next guest at Necronomicon, I believe, some 4 years ago when the show was first starting. And he was making the rounds to conventions and getting started with some books. Since then, he is not only an author in his own right, but he is also a creative content producer in his own right, working on some great projects, including, I've got my notes over here. See, I've got them all over here, guys, but I'm going to put them up here because I have old eyes. It happens. It'll happen to all of you that are out there someday. Best known, Jeff Carroll, we met Jeff when he was out talking about this. He's best known for his book, Harlem Shakes, and his newest project, which is Death Pledge, which is coming out. Please welcome, guys, to our screen, author and producer, Mr. Jeff Carroll. Jeff, how you doing, my man?
Very good. You can hear me really good?
We got you good, man.
All right, cool.
That's right. Welcome to the discussion tonight, Jeff. We're glad to have you with us. We're recording our Krypton Radio show, and for all of you on Krypton Radio, this is Mr. Jeff Carroll. Jeff, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Well, you did a real good job about it. I am currently writing comic books, but I made 2 films this year, so I got back to my roots as a filmmaker, and I plan on finishing book 4 and 5 of the Harlem Shake series this summer.
Fantastic, man. Well, thanks for joining our discussion. Guys, earlier on in the radio broadcast, I prefaced the entire broadcast by saying that our popular culture and science fiction community for 2 generations has been leading the way when it came to cultural diversity. There are a lot of places where we've made mistakes, and we're going to get into those in one of our segments here. But I want to talk up front a little bit about the history of our culture. And I know both of you are steeped in the traditions of our pop culture arts and entertainment world, whether it be movies and TV or comics. But we have a steeped history, and Mark, earlier this week on Facebook, you shared a post. And I know you didn't author it, but I know many of the facts in it are things that you knew, not just as a convention goer and a fan, but as an African American fan in America today. You knew these things, but it was an interesting thing and dynamic. And I'd like for you to talk to us a little bit now about the history of cultural diversity and the promotion of equality within the comic community, within the pop culture community that you've been a part of for so long. Can you tell us a little bit about that history and share that with us?
Oh my God. It's interesting how the creation of comics began, but what's more important of how it virtually evolved. Uh, it was probably the one of the only sources of information, sources, shall I say, of correctness that was brought about during that era or during that time of conventions. And as you speak, I'm actually trying to pull up, and I have found it. And basically, if I can go through this real quickly, so please forgive me for going so fast, guys. But basically, I'm not the author of this, but the person that created this was brilliant, and I agree with it 100%. And it pretty much said X-Men is not X-Men is about civil rights. If you didn't get that, you didn't get X-Men. Black Panther is about civil rights. If you didn't get that, you didn't get Black Panther. Captain America literally fought the Nazis. He is the embodiment of fighting the alt-right. If you didn't get that, you didn't get Captain America. The Empire in Star Wars is fascist. The Rebel Alliance is anti-fascist. If you didn't get that, you didn't get Star Wars. The Punisher, yada, yada, yada. I'll skip down a bit. It says Star Trek is about equality for all genders, races, and sexualities. If you didn't get that, you didn't get Star Trek. Superman and Supergirl are immigrants. If you didn't get that, you didn't get Superman and Supergirl. And of course, my good friend Stan Lee said, racism and bigotry are among the deadliest social ills plaguing the world today. If you're bigoted or racist, you didn't get any of the characters Stan Lee created. So that was basically what I put up on post.
Awesome, man. That is fantastic. I loved reading that. And again, not from a political stance. And I know that the author of that had, left and right and these things in mind. But really, it's about people and being correct and being right and spreading a message of that diversity. And ever since its conception, the comic industry, and particularly the pop culture comic industry, which is now talking about superheroes and these things. It didn't start that way, but as it evolved into that, from Superman forward, Superman himself, not just an immigrant, but he was a voice for social change in another tumultuous time. He promoted the New Deal in a time of poverty. He did these things. That was Superman's origin. But we're going to move on to Jeff Carroll. We're going to ask him sort of the same question and what in his background, steeped background in comic culture, and sort of his take on the first of many voices coming out of pop culture. In his knowledge base. So tell us a little bit about your not just your background, but your knowledge of pop culture and where some of our great heroes come from when it comes to being diverse.
Well, I was a very superficial comic book reader. I was more into the pictures and the energy of the heroes when I was younger. And it wasn't until I got older, till almost after the X-Men and the Fantastic Four first movies, that I started looking into who these characters really were. Because I was a kid that was fully immersed in love of Incredible Hulk's, just in his energy. I didn't see Captain America fighting the Nazis. Although now I fully understand that, and I started looking at it, I was like, you know what, Hydra, and I started putting everything together, and I said, Hydra, let me look at it. Then, of course, with the internet, I was able to go back to these old comics that I didn't buy. I just liked the heroes, and I found out who this character was and what he was fighting and where he came from, and I started researching all these origin stories. So yeah, I picked it up later, but I hadn't. It made perfect sense to me after I saw it. I saw the ethnicities of the people who created them. It made perfect sense, and especially in a world that needs heroes for people type enemies. Those type of things make sense. I mean, I'm from the community of Def Comedy Jam, right? And one of the comedians I used to represent, shout out to Arnold Acevedo, he used to always say, Batman never comes to our hood. He'd probably call up the Puerto Rican Batman. He'd be like, and he'd have a partner, and he did a whole skit on it, and it was really funny, but it really made sense. You know what I'm saying? Here we were cosplaying, loving these characters that didn't see us. They never protected us. Did Gotham have a black neighborhood? Forget about it. It was all a hood, right? So we're not worried about did Gotham have a hood? Did they even have a black neighborhood? You know what I'm saying? Did they have, forget hip hop. They didn't need hip hop. Hip hop. Did they have a jazz club? Because black people been here since rhythm and blues. So there's never been a period, whenever they thought America was, there was never a period without a significant African American influence. Jimi Hendrix, these guys, pioneered rock music. So you couldn't have, grunge. You couldn't have any of that without black people somewhere being, a part of it. So, just going back to a little bit of that, saying that, I learned these characters' origins. They made a lot of sense. This last season of The Watchmen on HBO kind of like did everything that, Black Panther didn't do domestically for speaking up for the cause. Like Black Panther, the movie was international, right? It spoke to the international presence, right? But The Watchmen, that brought it home. That brought it right domestic, and it just made sense. So there you have it. I'll finish later.
No, that is awesome, guys. That's what we're here for, to showcase the diversity that's come from our favorite characters and our favorite properties, because I'll tell everybody this right now. Today we have the ears of the policymakers and shapers. But when those ears disappear, it is then the artists, the filmmakers, the television producers, the writers, the authors, the artists. These guys are the guys who have been spreading a message for a very long time. We're the ones that tell the truth about the human condition, whether it's ugly or whether it's not ugly, whatever it is. Our job is to tell the truth. What Jeff and Marc have been talking about are the people who have been telling the truth for a very long time, even when we weren't listening. And so it's important today that as we are listening, we are up against a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to dive a little into our panelists and their favorites, their favorite moments from popular culture that express the kind of diversity that we're talking about today. And of course, I want to talk a little bit about the moments that we missed it, the moments that we missed the ball. What were the low points where we missed it when we were talking about it in pop culture? So on the other side of the commercial break, we're going to do that. In the meantime, stay tuned in and stay logged on, and we'll be right back. And we're back. If you're watching this on Facebook Live, that seemed like a really quick 5 seconds. If you're listening on Krypton Radio, you had to listen to some great ads from some amazing creators. So count yourself as lucky. The guys on Facebook didn't get that. See how lucky you are? Now, guys, as we're back, we've been talking about diversity in pop culture. I want to throw something out before we move on to our next portion of our topic. It's a piece from history. I did not know this. I was researching today. I want it to be right because I hate being wrong. And I wanted to be right, and we've been talking about Black Panther and what that meant. We've been talking about Watchmen and what that meant on television. And Marc touched on the X-Men and what that meant in comics. But guys, did y'all know that? I don't know if y'all knew this. I just found this out today. The first, published in 1947, Orrin C. Evans launched the and pardon the language, guys, it's the language of the day. The All-Negro Comics #1, which was an anthology of stories about African Americans in comics. In 1947, our community was telling stories about the African American community, and nobody was paying attention. It wasn't until 1966 with Black Panther that people started paying attention. And then again, Black Panther was reintroduced in Captain America in 1969, and people started to pay attention. But in 1947, we started this discussion, ladies and gentlemen, in comic culture with the All-Negro Comics #1, published by Orrin C. Evans. And he did a complete series that year that went from Ace Harlem, who was a detective, to the New Dillies. I don't know what that means. I'm sure it's a 1940s thing. The New Dillies, which was childlike creatures. And then again, he did, finally he did Ezekiel's Manhunt, which is about a pair of young boys who encounter a gun-toting bootlegger, very big topic back in the 1940s, of course. I didn't know if you guys knew that or not, but I found that earlier, and I thought it was a really fascinating fact that we've been talking about this for a long time. And as Marc alluded to earlier, talk is cheap. We've got to listen. because we've been talking about this since 1947 in our culture. That does, and we're going to get into films and television a little bit later on. But next up, the next segment says talk about specifics. So I want to know from each one of you, and I want to go around your highlight moments. What was the best moment in popular culture demonstrating the diversity that we're talking about? And what was the low point? Where's the moment when we did something that just made you go, oh man, I can't believe we did that? That's not the right way to do it. So let's start with Marc. High points and low points in popular culture for diversity. Marc.
High points, and I've told this story before, and much like a lot of celebrities that get on the stage from convention to convention, city to city, country to country, they share the same stories over and over because they're not sure who has heard it before. So I'm going to say this, so I'm going to tell you this story really fast. I'm really going to breeze by it because I don't want to take up a lot of your time, and we need to, I'd rather listen to Jeff than to listen to myself. So I'm really going to tell this. Out of the number of times that I've sat with Stan Lee on stage, presenting him to the audience and fielding questions, Stan always needed a question repeated to him because his hearing wasn't the greatest. So as someone out in the audience gets to a microphone and asks the question, he always leans over to me and goes, what did he say, Marc? What did he say, Marc? And I would repeat the question. This went on for a while during any standard introduction or appearance of Stan Lee at number of conventions that I've joined him. I had the pleasure and the honor of joining him with. So after a while, the questions started getting a little bit generic, and it may have been rude not to always share the question that was asked from the person at the mic, but they were really becoming very typical, such as what gave you the idea for the Incredible Hulk? What gave you the idea for Spider-Man? What gave you the idea for Captain America? How'd you come up with so on? So I kind of played a little joke on Stan, and every time he would lean over to me, and this didn't go on very long. I was very respectful of the people out in the audience as well as Stan's time on stage, but I wanted to give a little fun to a lot of the boring questions that were coming up. And I shouldn't say they were boring because they were from that individual, and this is information that they wanted to know. Either way, Stan would lean over to me and say, hey, what'd that gentleman say? And I'd say to Stan, he said, how come you didn't give them more black comic book characters? And he look at me and he start giving an answer, yada, yada, yada. And another question would come up. Same kind of typical question. I'd lean over to Stan again, and Stan would say, what'd he say? And he said, that guy said, how come you didn't give us more black comic characters? You know, eventually it got to a point where I knew, okay, and long enough, time to stop. And I gave him that same answer again. And he looked up to us and to the whole audience. I said us because I'm a spectator as well. And he says, well, I gave you Black Panther, you know, like that. And the audience just busted out in cheers. And he turned to me and says, Marc, I knew you were kidding me all along. So I just wanted to go ahead and throw that out to you. So that was my high, the fact that the creator of Black Panther, sitting next to an African-American individual on stage and playfully blaming him for not giving us black comic book characters, whereas I was well aware of the black comic book characters that he gave us. And I just wanted him to talk a little bit about that at that time. That's my high.
All right. Well, let's go. Yes, there we go. Low. Let's go low. What is the low? When did we miss, man? When did we maybe aim for it? We just missed the mark a little bit.
Where we missed the mark was in the 70s. I'm a product of the 60s, raised in the 70s. During the 70s, it seemed that the comic book industry focused a lot on the drug use in urban cities. They brought out specific comic book team-ups, such as Captain America and Black Falcon, Green Lantern and Green Arrow. And those were deeply embedded storylines based on heroin use and the drug use that were in, of course, black communities. And I think the comic book industry, it was a high and a low kind of. I knew they wanted to tackle the drug industry in their storytelling, but it's not anything the drug community, and black communities were not aware of. We were reading comic books to get away from things like that. Comics was our escapism, but yet we were being reminded, okay, of the negative aspect and the depression and the anguish of what we were going through in our own urban communities, and we didn't really need the comic book industry to throw that in our face. My opinion.
No, absolutely. You know what? It is great when a comic book or an author in a book or a television show or a movie tackles tough issues, as long as we tackle it from the point of view of an objective look at things. And when we don't do that and we focus in so narrowly on it, we don't get good art because we don't get good truth.
Yeah, let me preface that a little bit too. And the prime example is what's going on today. Okay, we knew those specific comic issues that were focused on drugs and literally blacks, shall I say. They were focused on us, and yet there wasn't much advancement because of that focus. But because we've been saying it for centuries, hey, we got a problem. Hey, we got a problem. Hey, we got a problem. And then boom, all of a sudden we come into the current day and we're now saying, hey, we got a problem. And this white person wants to tell you this also. Hey, we got a problem. And this Asian person wants to tell you this also. Hey, we got a problem, yada, yada, yada. When we all spoke ourselves from, for centuries, all of a sudden we have backup. And I know they were there, but really weren't afraid to approach.
Okay, guys, we lost Marc's audio. Marc, we lost your audio, my man. We lost your audio. Okay, so I know you have to, I don't know if you have to drop or how you're going to come back in. But however we work that out, we'll get that squared away. In the meantime, I'm going to shoot it over to our guest, Jeff Carroll.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, I can.
Got it.
I don't know how he did that. He's a miracle worker, ladies and gentlemen.
Real quick, Garrett.
Yes.
A banner popped up on the screen, says my mic has been muted, and I saw down the bottom my mic was muted. I unmuted. Yeah, that's okay. That's how we learn.
That was actually the control room's fault, but he fixed it. You see how that
happened?
Not a problem. They
problem.
messed it up. He fixed it. That's the way we go on this show. We just roll with it. Guys, we're going to go over to Jeff Carroll. We're going to ask him first. Highlight moments, man. When were the best moments? When did you see something that we did in popular culture that was right on? And when did you see something we did that missed the mark, as Marc just talked about? So, Jeff, it's all yours, my man. Let's talk a little bit about it.
Man, I'm probably one of those people that I would say Trump supporters are really frustrated with. Because I see small progresses being made, but my goal is so much broader that I'm not happy with Uhura. You understand? I understand it made a lot of sense for the Star Wars universe in 1964 or 1967 when it came out. And in context, that was really good. You know what I'm saying? But for her to still be, sort of a space secretary in the reboots, that's not enough for me. That's not progress, And I see the world as being very diverse. So I'm not really happy with that, right? For me, like, my happiness comes very contemporary, right? It comes very, very contemporary. So, like, the first thing that made me like happy, right? Like Avatar, the blue people were not the Airbender. We're not gonna go there, but the blue people one was close. I was like, yes, he got the blue monkey line in there. We still had the little white savior, right? Right. But what really did it for me was Luke Cage on Netflix.
Okay.
I was like, you know what? Season 2, I know people had mixed feelings about it, but you had hip hop in there from Harlem. It embraced the culture of Harlem. Now, I talked about jazz music being, a part of African-American history. I get all of that. I'm with you on that. However, I don't know if a black person would have spoken so much jive in the creation of Luke Cage. I don't know if we would have given ourselves a tiara, right? Or Wonder Woman bracelets and a chain belt. Whoa, that's Mr. T didn't even do that. So I was so excited when he got rid of all of that. When he
I want to. Yeah, I want to jump. No, I mean I want to jump in here with Jeff because I got to tell you, Marc hit it when he talked about the '70s and he talked about the idea of telling these stories that were happening in urban America, that were happening in Black communities, but and Marc knows what I'm talking about when I say film and television and comics all did this in the '70s. Today we call it blaxploitation. It's where they wanted things to be. They wanted to include our Black communities, but they didn't know how. And because they didn't know how, they looked at stereotypes and they promulgated stereotypes. They put it out there like the superhero Power Man, which is Luke Cage's superhero name. Power Man was a stereotype. Sage, kick over, please. Kick over, please. Please, I need to unmute me and kick over, please. One moment. Come on. You're moving. Okay. Okay. Unmute me, please. Unmute me, please. You really need to. Okay, there I go. I'm unmuted. Good deal. Okay, guys, we lost our other camera, so that's okay. Again, we wanted to do these stories, but instead of doing these stories, we pushed forward stereotypes. And when Luke Cage hit Netflix, and they got rid of all of that, they got rid of the big open '70s collar, they got rid of all the chains, they got rid of the. Now, in fairness, though, I will say that the African American community, you guys can grow hair like nobody I know, because I saw Marc's hair during the COVID-19 thing.
My Corona fro.
Corona fro. But that being said, they got rid of all that, and they gave Luke Cage a real story arc from a guy that you could look at and relate to, because he was a real guy. He wasn't this stereotype guy. So, Jeff, I'm right there with you, man. I loved watching Luke Cage because I loved the fact that it was made contemporary, and we took away all of the things that we had done inadvertently. I'll grant it was inadvertent, but we did it so that we could include Black folks in the '70s when we didn't know how. And so I'm glad that we fixed it, and thanks for bringing that. So I'm right with you. That was one of my highlights too. Guys, we're up against a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to get Jeff's answer to the worst moments. He already told me you don't like many of them, so let's find out what he thought was the worst. Okay, when we come back on the other side of the commercial break. So stay tuned in and stay logged on, and we'll be right back. And we're back, guys. Welcome to the Hanging with Web Show Radio Hour. I am GW Pomacher. I am your host. I have joined with co-host this evening, Mr. Marc B. Lee from MBL Entertainment. We are trying as best we can. We have a lot of fun together, unfortunately. But we are talking about a serious topic. We're talking over a serious conversation, and we're laughing a little bit too, because you know what? That's what we do. The people on this show right now are all friends, and we're fortunate to be with one another right now in these times. So when we left Jeff pondering a question. We said, Jeff, what's the worst thing we did for diversity in pop culture and comics? What's the worst moment that you can remember? And you remember, Jeff told us on the other side of the commercial break, he don't have many ups. There aren't many thumbs ups. Jeff doesn't go around giving thumbs up. He's a strict 5. He's like Marc when he does a movie review. He's a strict 5 and 6 kind of guy. If you're going to get a 7 or an 8, you better work for it. So Now, knowing that Jeff's a 5 and 6 kind of guy, let's find out where he gave a 2 and a 3. Jeff,
I would say this. I'm only like that with regards to that question. You know what I'm saying? So that's really, that's my only time that I'm challenged. And I thought about this, long and hard for the 5 minutes that I had to think about it. So again, I'm just going to go contemporary because I could go through the 80s and say the black guy dies first. That seems like an old joke. I could say, one of my mentors, Stephen Barnes, has a running challenge to people to show us when black characters get love scenes in movies. So I'm not going to mention, how what was it? Cyborg is, has no genitals. You know what I'm saying?
It's got a chastity belt on.
Right. Even the Hulk gets sex. What's the robot? The robot Vision in X-Men. He had a girlfriend.
Oh my God.
And Cyborg couldn't even get a side sister or something. So,
Side sis.
right? I don't know. I don't want to wait for Swamp Thing and Man Beast to come in and they get girls. But hey, it is what it is. So I'm just gonna go with an obvious one, and it was when they were trying to do something good, and it still didn't hit the mark. And it's probably my favorite brand of the brands. I spent a whole year reading nothing but this brand's novelized books from their expanded universe, and that was in Star Wars when they brought out Finn. I felt that was, it was right on the money for all of the haters that were waiting for something to go wrong to call him a space janitor. I'm like, man, it was just as bad as Leslie Jones in the remake of Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters, yeah.
Right. The problem was Ghostbusters is not as big as Star Wars. So it was the same mistake, but it was just on the main stage. You know what I'm saying? And to have Finn not able to contribute any additional knowledge of the bases that they had to take down the shields. I mean, they repeated the daggone same plot. Whoa, how do we get to the how do we get through the what do you call it? The Death Star. We got to take down the shields. How do we get to the Death Planet? Whatever that was called. We got to take down the shields. Well, now you got Finn. He's a janitor. He knows everything. Nope. Forget him. We don't need him. So to me, that was that. And then to make him the scaredest trooper ever. Good Lord. Oh my God. He was running from his own shadow. And he was trained.
Yeah, I know Marc's got something on that too, and I want to, because Star Wars is someplace I want to hit on this too, because again, I like to be right as often as I can. I wanted to do my homework. I knew I was talking to two of the smartest guys I know, and I didn't want to get caught off guard. So, but going back in entertainment as far back as 1900 to 1916's films and 1919 films, you will see that a stereotype, a negative stereotype of the African American community was pushed forward by production teams, by writers, by a bunch of talented guys. They pushed this forward. So when we went back to undo it, a lot of times we did those same things with stereotype. And I read an article, it's a really interesting article, and it said in the 1990s when they did the trilogy, the prequel trilogy to Star Wars. It was a New York Times reviewer who wrote that the characterization of Jar Jar Binks was straight out of a 1930s and 40s movie depiction of an African American back then. And he even pointed to the and I want to be the name escapes me because it was a screen name. What was the name of the actor?
Step and Fetch It.
Step and Fetch It. That's what they even referred. The New York Times.
Black people here. Black people here. Just ask us.
See, that's right. I like I said, I wanted to be right, so I looked up the reason. Step and Fetch It. Push forward all these stereotypes about black people in America through the film industry, and then turn around 1990s, ladies and gentlemen. We have been learning about diversity and culture, and we've been learning about racial equality. We've been doing this for a long time, and in the 1990s, here we go. We write a character that is straight out of a Step and Fetch It film. Marc?
Let me interject real quick. For our people and the way we advance in anything that we do, particularly motion pictures, since we're talking about motion pictures, with every rung of the ladder that we climb, and you'll know this character that I'm about to call out, with every rung of the ladder that we climb up, at the top, there's always a kingpin. There's always a bald white guy with a white suit and a cigar in his mouth up at the top, and basically allowing these actors, Halle Berry, okay, winning Oscars and so on and so on, and says, okay, you can climb up another rung, but not too close, and don't go too fast. Slow down, slow down, slow down. That's the kingpin that's up there at the top that basically is fearful for a white audience to become very used to, very familiar with the black actors. Of course, that's changed dramatically over the last few years, probably the last few decades, whereas you're seeing a lot more African-American based movies at the theater that you wouldn't have seen probably 10 years ago. And that's partly attributed to what's going on right now in current events, where it's not just black people that are fed up. Enough, it's enough. It's now everyone. It's like, getting back to your character real quick, Finn, I agree with Jeff 100%. My God, first it was Jar Jar Binks, and then what you know what they did, Jeff? They gave us another rung of the ladder. We're not getting very high up there, but it's like, okay, I tell you what, we're going to put a black guy in Star Wars. He's not going to be a Billy D. Williams who stood around on a barge and holding a freaking spear the entire time or trying to hit on the white girl. Okay, they say, hey, look, this is what we're going to do. We're going to put a black guy in these next 3 movies of Star Wars. Okay, he's going to have a huge role. He's going to have a big role, and then bam, exactly what Jeff said. He's the janitor. It's like, okay, you're right. He's scared of everything. It's like, Finn, take control. You are a main character in this new trilogy of Star Wars, but we're not going to let you get too far ahead for people to like you. We're going to give it to the girl.
Yeah. Well, I want to know something too, guys. With regard to the character of Finn, and I do see that where they were trying to pay some lip service to the diversity that we were begging for as an audience, as a community. We were begging for this. They wanted to pay lip service to it, but they didn't want to give him too much of a role, because here's the thing. We do find out that he was in maintenance. He was a janitor, basically. He should know all these things. As Jeff pointed out, he's the perfect guy to find out where all of your little places are.
Well, he was a stormtrooper.
That's right, he was a stormtrooper. I want to know how a janitor got sent down to a combat assignment in the first place, though, in the very beginning. Nobody thought that through. When they put I was in the Army for several years, and I can tell you, we didn't send the maintenance guys to the combat zone. We didn't send the cooks. We didn't send. We didn't even send like the tankers into the rifleman zone. So I want to know how they managed to explain that they sent this trooper down to quell a village, and then later on they retconned it into he's a janitor.
Let's not lose too much focus on the character or the role of Finn in terms of casting. Okay, he was one of 3 main characters in those Star Wars movies. Okay, that was Rey, Finn, and Poe. Okay, they were the focus. They were the guys that's going to be on the freaking posters. If you notice the evolution of Star Wars posters, well, it's Finn, Rey, and Poe's turn now to be in the forefront, okay, of those posters. So he was allocated to be some sort of integral part of the Star Wars last 3 movies, shall I say? And not go ahead, Jeff. Go.
Yeah. No, you got to even frame it bigger than that.
Okay.
Not only was he that, we're talking about the 6-month out trailer teaser. Him ripping off his helmet and revealing that he's a black guy. So now you're saying, holy moly, this is the face of the franchise.
So guys, how does that happen? Let me ask you, you guys look at that. How does that happen, guys? How does it happen that this guy is slated to be one of our big 3? He's slated to be one of the blockbuster stars of the biggest franchise on planet Earth. And then, when we're in the writer's room, what happens in the minds of writers that we relegate him to the position that we did? What is wrong with that? Where did it break?
The beginning. You almost want to say that casting Arnold Schwarzenegger, you bring his personal baggage of being a bodybuilder in with him to Conan or whatever character Terminator he's playing. Finn, John Boyega, played in this movie called Attack the Block. And when you ask the question, when did we get it right? I would have said Attack the Block. But Attack the Block is a British production, so that doesn't really qualify as we got it right. More so they got it right and we picked up on it, right?
Yeah.
So for him to have been the strong black male character that led an alien resistance in Attack the Block to coming into a space janitor who is scared of his own shadow and step and fetch it, who can't even strategize his way around a lifesaver, right? It's almost like they emasculated him.
Right.
It's almost like they emasculated him because he was that he had that reputation. When people saw him in the movie, we were like, "Oh, they got dude from Attack the Block. He about to go attack the block on Star Wars." That's what we thought when all of us saw. It's like, all of a sudden you cast Jackie Chan or you cast some incredible fighter. Put the Rock, you put the Rock in there and all of a sudden the Rock is, wait a minute. No. I mean, I understand anybody can play anything, right? They're all actors. I get that. But at some point, there is a image that an actor has. And when you're marketing and you don't really show everything, you didn't say, this is John Boyega playing a very different role than what you saw in his last movie. He's not smart in this movie.
But if I can interject, I respected Boyega more in the second Pacific Rim movie than I did in Star Wars, in all honesty. I was not happy with his role in Star Wars, but I was like, okay, there you go, respectable role. It had to happen in a Pacific Rim movie. And I'm like, wait, Star Wars, he did that before Pacific Rim 2. What did I miss here? And I bet you it's just a different producer, different production company, different values.
Well, I was going to say, hats off, by the way, to John Boyega and his acting. He's a phenomenal actor. Again, a lot of these decisions are made in the writer's room. They're made with the producers. They're made with the studios. And you guys both pointed out that this character of Finn was designed to be this huge part of our trio. There's always a trio in Star Wars. Whether you go back to the originals, whether you take the prequels, there's always this trio of people working together in Star Wars. He was designed to be one of these big three. And I have to wonder if that's our fault. And when I say ours, I'm talking to the audiences out there. I'm talking, and I'm talking to white audiences. Because you know what? Today we're all together. Today we're all listening. Today we're all watching the news, and we're all, I got to tell you guys, I live in a little bitty town of Melbourne, Florida. There's nothing happening here, but I'm watching TV thinking, man, I wish I was in an urban area. I wish I was out there with these kids because they're getting it right finally. But did we stop listening for a period of time back in the day? Because it sounds to me like they set this guy up to be this big thing, and then you went into the writer's room with a bunch of people who are trying to make an audience happy, and they said, the white people won't care about that, so let's just make him a janitor and have him be the scaredest stormtrooper in the world. It's almost like there was backlash for being right.
No, I honestly think it's the fault of the writers and not the fault of the audience, because all you need is one writer, someone who's biased, someone who's bigoted, someone who's prejudiced, someone who's racist. All you need is one of them who may not have revealed himself to write the lines, to write the scenes, to write the scenario and say, yeah, put you in your place. Okay. All you need is one. I don't think it was the audience at all, because we have advanced enough, as you can see currently, that the white audience will accept a Boyega. We've gone.
Stop! Don't you mute? Okay, guys. We somehow she managed to mute you again, Marc. But that's okay. We know you're there, and we're gonna come back on. We have our final commercial break, guys. When we come back, we're gonna ask the question. We're gonna put the question to our panel. We're gonna put it to you guys in the chat room and the audience. How do we do better? How do we do better in the industry? We're going to talk a little bit again about the history of the industry and where it comes from and what's been done wrong. But how do we do better moving forward? There's been some great examples in the news recently of studios and producers and people who are trying to do better. Let's talk to some creators like our friend Jeff. Let's talk to Marc from the convention circuit. How do we do better going up? Stay tuned in and stay logged on, and we'll be right back. And we're back, guys. We are back from our final commercial break, and we're going to wrap the radio show up with our discussion again of diversity in pop culture and where we've come. We've talked a little bit about where we've been. We've talked about where we are and the highlights of getting where we are. We've also talked about the low points, the places where we missed the mark trying to get where we are today.
No, you said Marc.
I did say Marc. We didn't miss Marc because Marc's back. He's here. We don't miss him. He's here. I can't miss him. He won't go away. You see how that works? Anyway, but there were times when we missed what we were aiming at, and Marc and Jeff both talked about that. We let you guys know a little bit about the things that were pluses and minuses in our life. But next, we're going to talk about what we can do better. People who are trying to do better, people who are doing it right, people who are doing it wrong, and what we can do to make this discussion move forward in a positive way. Because it's not just about talking about it, guys. You have to walk the walk if you're going to talk the talk. And that goes back to those writers' rooms we were talking about before the break. It goes back to those producers. It goes back to those actors taking a stand for what they want to see done. It goes back to every creative artist on the internet, whether you're doing a YouTube show or writing an independently published book or doing a comic series, or whether you're working in these big companies producing fantastic content. You have to do better. What are you going to do better? Let's talk to our panel a little bit about that. Marc, let's start with you. You've been following at the entertainment community for a long time. You've known big stars. You've known little stars. Since that's right. He interviewed Moses at the very first Canaan City Comic-Con. I made all that up just now. I don't know.
That's pretty good.
It's probably not. But Marc, you've been around entertainers, big stars, little stars, wannabe stars, a long time. What can we do better?
I think the audience has accepted us on the screen, whether big or large, and in starring roles. Okay, I think they're comfortable. They're okay with us. I think it's the powers that be that are holding us back. In all honesty, I think they really are. What we can do better is go ahead and explore a lot of the African American talent in the acting industry that's out there right now, and put their faces on the screen, whether it's a supporting role or whether it's a starring role. I think male and white dominated Hollywood is about to come to an end. In all honesty, I really think that what's going on in current events, that I've said a million times already, that this is a huge change for everyone. The fact that, not you guys personally, but you, sir, your daughter's dating a black guy. You, ma'am, your son's dating a white girl, and so on and so on. That's totally irrelevant to the generation after us right now. They're not necessarily focusing more on the color on the skin. It's basically the parents and the grandparents that are pointing it out, making notice of it, and just screwing everything up. So with that generation behind us, the ones that are part of the movie-going audience, and this is where the executives need to listen up big time, guys. People that are spending money and buying popcorn is a generation behind us. We're dying off. Okay, you better depend on them right now, and they are enjoying the company of people of all races. So if you want to cater to that generation, if you want to cater to those customers, you better mix it up a bit, guys. Okay, don't say, oh, this is gonna be Scream 2. Oh, look, like you said, Jeff. Oh, I was about to say something to you, Jeff, about the black guy getting killed off first, and I was saying, okay, well, and he's going to trip and fall. So that's my part right there for you, Garrett.
All right, man. Okay, Jeff, man. You come at this from the creative standpoint, from the guy in the back room, from the guy doing the writing and the producing. How do we do better as a creative arts community at being more diverse, of including one another, of sharing what I think is the belief of all of us at the creator level? It's like Marc said, it's the producer level, it's those guys that are making mistakes. At the creative level, we all believe this. So how do we do a better job of showing it?
Well, I'll just say this. Let me speak as a creator. I've gotten back into comic books through Kickstarter, and Kickstarter is more than just allowing independent people to put their books and products for sale. It actually bypasses the gatekeepers. It allows the creator to make a pitch to the consumer without the comic book store retailer, without the manufacturer, whatever that is in film and television and music, and without the publisher gatekeeper saying the public won't go for this, the community won't go for this. So I had my first crowdfunding comic book, and I'm preparing to do my second one next week. And my advice is based on the fact that real change is already being happening, right? It's happening on the independent level. It's always been there. It's just that we had gatekeepers. Mm-hmm. They would say the public isn't going to buy this. You know, you need to change your book cover. You need to rewrite this character to make it this or that ethnicity. So now we've just said, forget the gatekeepers. So my one suggestion is support Kickstarters, right? To not only buy their books, buy their products, help fund them. That's how you get, that's how we can get change. You know what I'm saying? So go on Indiegogo, right? Go on GoFundMe. Kickstarter is really doing it for comic books. Some of the other platforms are doing it for film, and I've even seen books, right, on there. So instead of saying, you know, if this book comes out, I'll buy this book. If this movie comes out, I'll watch this. No, go on there and vote with your investment money and put it where you put it where change is happening. You already see what you're interested in. A lot of us independent people, we're raw. We're Jimi Hendrix in the studio raw. You know what I'm saying? You never know what you may get out. You may get something that Hollywood would have never caught on for another 20 years. So support those films. I had a film project on GoFundMe, right? I had a comic book on Kickstarter. So I'm not, promoting my works. I'm just using that as an example. Black sci-fi has existed long before Luke Cage and Black Panther. Diversity in books and stories and comic books existed long before it existed on the level of published books. Before there was Black Panther, there was some black kid with the ability to draw, drawing his own, calling his neighborhood some type of superhero village. So now with these platforms, right, you can see these people and appropriately contribute. I'm not saying $500. Some of them are available for $5.
And with that, guys, that leaves us. We are going to wrap the radio show here up really quick, and we're going to keep going with the broadcast for as long as you guys have stuff to say, or they've got questions in the chat maybe. But we're going to wrap the radio show up, guys. Please check out everything. My call to action for you, check out MBL Entertainment online on Facebook. You can also find MBL Entertainment content over at HWWS Web TV. We are proud to distribute Marc and so much of his content. Man, this guy knows everybody. If you want to see him talk to some of his best friends, which is something I like to do anyway, check out HWWS Web TV. Also, guys, check out Jeff Carroll's work. You can find him online. I think she's got a link. Oh, there we go. There's his YouTube channel. You can check out some of his film projects. You can also check out the work that he's authored in his comic work. And like he said, man, call to action. Support our African American community of artists. They're out there. They're doing the work. They're creating a world that looks more like the world that you live in. It's not about the world that the old guys in the suits and ties and boardrooms wanted you to think was out there. It's the world you actually live in. It's diverse. There are people of any color, any shape, any size. There are at least 2 genders, and I keep reading that we're broadening that definition as well. So keep up and support these indie artists. Final words. You got about 2 sentences, guys. So Marc B. Lee, final words.
Can you hear me? You guys good? Okay, sorry. I want to thank God for everything that's happening right now. And I want to thank the people that are very observant and accepting and understanding of the nature of the game that's going on. So we've been playing the game for centuries. Thank you for joining in. We appreciate that part.
Carroll, final words. You got about 2 sentences, my brother. Go ahead. Final words on the topic for Krypton Radio.
I would just say the best is yet to come, everybody. So get ready. Science fiction and stuff has gotten stale, and they were doing remakes. So now here comes diversity with fresh ideas. So get ready. It's already here. So join in and take part.
Yeah. Oops.
Oh, there we go. Now I'm not. Awesome, guys. Thank you guys so much for being on. Thank you on Krypton Radio for listening in. If you're on Facebook right now, stay tuned in for a few minutes, for a few seconds right here. We're going to say peace out to everybody on Krypton Radio. Guys, we love you. Stay tuned in, stay logged on, and see who we're hanging with next. All right, guys, on Facebook Live, we're still here. That's right, we're still here. And guys, thank you so much for that. I know, 60 minutes is not a long time to share what I think is an issue that has been relegated to the sidelines for so long. It's we keep thinking we fixed it, and every time we think we fixed it, we find out that there is a systemic thing that we didn't fix, we ignored, and then we find out that bad things are happening all over the place. The news runs in the background here in the studio every single day. I just like to know what's going on in the world. And there are days, and for the last 2 weeks, there are days when I've shaken my head. I just put it down and I said, what happened? What happened? Because, my upbringing, and I tell people all the time, I think one of the things I can do for myself, I can define my own white privilege by where I come from and where I've been. And one of the privileges that I've had is I grew up in a boarding school with students from all over the world and a large population from urban South and from the islands, from the Caribbean. We had a multicultural, multiracial population at my school. I didn't know people saw people with such hate and disgust. I didn't know that for my entire growing up because, the people I was growing up with, of course we knew we were different from one another. I was the short, blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy, and, my roommate was this tall, and he was this skinny, and he was from the Bahamas, and he talked like this, man, because he wanted me to know what he was talking about. And so I didn't know that these differences bred this kind of hate. And then I went home and I grew up and I went other places and I thought to myself, what the hell is wrong with these people?
Garrett, Jeff and I have been walking in these shoes for our entire lives. And we've gotten to a place, at least our race, where we don't even have to look. We have spidey sense. And we know in a minute when, number one, we're being stalked, number one, we're being looked at. Just me going into a retail store, automatically I'm scoping the front desk because I'm like, okay, who's going to point me out first? Okay, it's normal for us. It's common for us. One thing I want to point out during this, I don't want to call it a crisis. I don't want to call it I don't know, disaster, whatever. No, this is an awakening. People are basically saying what you're saying. Is saying
it's a movement. This is a movement. This is a movement to be a part of, guys, because this is our chance. We've had chances before, and we didn't make the mark.
The funny thing about it, Garrett, is, and this is just a figurative saying. Okay, I think I'm saying it. No, figurative, whatever. Jeff, you might be able to relate to this. I can literally see my ancestors all the way up to my grandmother and my grandfather, who are the most recent passing, up in heaven, looking down at this protest. They're on the couch and they got their legs crossed. And they're going, okay, now you got it. And saying that to everybody. I got a lot of my white friends. And here's two flips of the coin. I got a lot of my white friends that are either trying too hard, okay, or I'm not hearing anything. All righty. And the way you find out how someone who is actually the way they actually are is if they approach you, yes, they all approach, but some are heavy-handed. They're like, Mark, what can we do? Mark, blah, blah, blah. I say, you got to be kidding me. What can you do? And then I have some friends who I haven't heard anything from. I'm on Facebook. I read their posts, but there's a specific number of people on my Facebook, on my friends list, that I haven't heard anything from. And I'm just sitting back and I'm waiting because this is revealing a lot. NASCAR just announced today that they are eliminating the Confederate flag from all of their races. Do you know how many hillbillies are up in arms right now? They are going absolutely freaking out of their mind. It's like, oh, well, you guys don't understand what the Confederate flag is, and then we got to go through their speech. Go ahead, Jeff.
Jeff. Jeff, we're gonna let's talk a little bit about that, Jeff. Also, because I want to also point out, guys, that for those of you that are out there that are either a different race or from a different culture or whatever, and that don't understand the importance of what Marc just announced. To check the news, it's out there, it's in the news. But if you don't understand the importance of that, remember something, guys. After the Civil War, the United States, the generals went out of their way to be gracious. However, the United States wasn't being gracious, it was being cowardly. It was letting things stand that had never stood before in history of warfare. When you decimate your enemy, you decimate your enemy. He goes to the hall of the vanquished. Doesn't go to an honorable place at the dinner table with his uniform. And so that wasn't grace, that was cowardice. And so that has lasted this long, and that flag and that emblem that was a symbol of hate has never been identified clearly as a symbol of hate. It has never been pointed to and said, this was just, we're going to scratch this out. That NASCAR, rooted deeply in the South, would make that announcement and risk all of those fans to do it. That's a big moment in history. That means it's time to keep going, keep pushing, keep momentum. Jeff, weigh in, brother.
I'll say this. I'm just like any other Black American, and maybe not, because we're not monolithic, right? We all have different experiences. I grew up in the suburbs up in New Jersey, and I didn't know New Jersey was probably more racist than parts of the South, right? So I had my radar, and I'm telling my son, when I'm driving, I could tell where every cop car is on the highway, in front of me, across the other side, behind me, next to me, any moment in time. But even me, right, with all of that experience, I am surprised at things that I hear, because now we are living in the transparent era of social media, right? My daughter-in-law told me that she grew up in South Carolina or Georgia. I can't remember. I think it's Georgia. And she said, oh no, the Ku Klux Klan used to have a booth at the state fair. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And this is my daughter-in-law. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm saying, holy moly, and it's ingrained, right? So I know every time I go up to Tampa, I see that big Confederate flag waving out there.
Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And I got that. I used to stop and take a picture, right? My friends wouldn't believe it, right? And so now it's coming down. So I'm laughing at a lot of those things, but you're right. It's racism has been so ingrained in our society that so many things we don't really notice. One other thing that blew my mind, and this is like that viral video thing in this era of viral videos, another person that's young enough to have been my son, he put this story of how when he was in kindergarten, they took him to pick cotton, and it is the most hilarious story, right? But nowhere was the school system sued. Nowhere. This is integration, right? This is in the 80s or 90s. I'm not sure how old he is, but it's not the 70s, and certainly not the 60s. They took him to pick cotton. And so when we hear and it was no context. It was, Black History Month field trip. How do you do that? You know what I'm saying? So I know I've been to I pride myself of being to 47 states through my field. I was an entertainment agent, so I went to all these places, and I used to marvel at the interpretations of things. Like long before Donald Trump started saying fake news, I started to see biased news, and these local newscasters were saying outrageous things. You're dealing with a state that has 90% white people, so they don't really, I used to take artists and this is in the 90s, right? This is 96. We would go to do shows in Wisconsin, and one of my poets had dreads. Even the Black children in Wisconsin would ask, "Can I touch it?" This is where we live.
Wow.
Yes, it is. The world we live in.
Yeah, here's the thing, guys. And again, I speak from a very different platform than my guest today, than my friends, because my upbringing, my background, all of these things are very different. I don't have these experiences, but what I do have are eyes, and it is time for our peers throughout the arts and entertainment community, throughout the pop culture world. It is time for our peers to open theirs, because it is time to make systemic change. We cannot live in a society where we claim equality, where we claim liberty and justice, and we don't live up to that claim anymore. We have had 200 years to get it right. Our founders knew that their sins were left on the table to be fixed by a later generation. They knew it. They argued about it. They left those sins on the table. 100 years later, they did away with the sin of slavery. 100 years after that, we thought we marched for civil rights and that we did away with those injustices. And here we are, 50 years after that. And we're still having this discussion. And it's not because we're still discussing it. We're not discussing it as if it were ancient history. Jeff told you a story about the 90s when they're taking a black child to a cotton field. That's a history lesson? No, ladies and gentlemen, that's not a history lesson.
Look,
That would be a history lesson. That would be a history lesson if he sits on the school bus and looks at the field and he's told that that's where his great-great-grandfather would have been made to work. If he's out there experiencing it, that is abject humility. That's not a history lesson. Abject humility is not the point. Yeah. So when you see a sign that says Black Lives Matter, you better know that it's true. And when you see somebody out there protesting anti-immigration spiel, you better know that it's true, because we are a nation of immigrants. All of us came from somewhere else. I have blonde hair and blue eyes. I promise you, there's not a single Native American tribe here in the United States that looks like me. We all came from somewhere. We all had to get here somehow. We all need to learn and open our eyes, because that's all I've got. I don't have my experiences like Jeff does. I don't have experiences like Marc does. I've got my eyes and my ears and my heart, and I have to open them all. I hope I've done a good job. I hope that my friends can be proud of their friend. But you all need to do it too. And I want to thank Kyle Nunez and all the gang who's been in the chat room. I know we've still got some people in there. Thank you all. If you have questions or you have things that you want to ask the guys, please jot them into the chat room now. If not, we're going to start wrapping things up a little bit with some final, some final calls to action. Marc, go ahead, man.
Yeah, I got a final thought, and I probably have to scoot out in a bit too. I haven't had my dinner yet, by the way. But I just want to make a lot of people very aware that even though I haven't heard from you, it's not like there was a death in my family and you need to come and show your sympathy. No, you don't. One thing I don't like to do is preach to someone personally unless they've really pissed me off by sending a message, or they posted something on their Facebook page where I look and I see, oh my God, they really just didn't get it. And I interject, and I'm basically giving you a chance, because if you're going to be majorly ignorant with me, then you're going to be majorly out with me. Simple as that. But one thing I don't want to do or like to do is literally preach to people. There's enough elegant speakers, much like yourself, Garrett, that can basically lecture you. Okay, I come from the streets of Baltimore, Maryland. Everything you've heard about Baltimore, if you've seen the show The Wire, well, I was in the midst of that. I was in the depth of that. Those were not my neighborhoods. We didn't talk a lot. we shot a lot, but we didn't talk a lot because we don't want to waste our time. If you're going to be one of those that's just going to not listen, if you're going to be one of those, that say, oh, he's just using the race card, you better wake up, because right now there's a lot of people, and it's really funny how the haters are so outnumbered, how the Confederate lovers are so outnumbered, how everyone in history who wanted to denigrate or enslave or look down on people that they claim are better than them, okay, on people that they think are going to take what they have, knock on wood, so-called achieve, Columbus, the murderer and rapist, okay, then you haven't been listening or watching. Everyone who was against this movement, against us as a people, against everything that is on the wrong side of God, you will be educated very, very quickly. I've seen this movement move faster than any movement I've ever seen in my Black life. And I now have some serious hope that there are going to be people out there that's going to say, you know what, Mark, I'm so sorry. Like you, Garrett, I had no idea. I didn't know. Okay, you're forgiven. It's only been in your face for 400 years, but you're forgiven. Okay. And we get it now, but we're not going to sit here and point at you and say, we tried to tell you. I told you, you wouldn't listen. We tried to tell you. No. I'm not that type. Okay. I like action. You don't have to say a thing to me. Show me. Okay. Words mean absolutely nothing to me. Show me. So for those of you guys, my friends that have been very, very quiet, I haven't put you in any group as of yet. I have no idea what's going through your brain. I'm sure some of you are just scared. You don't want to approach me because you think I'll chew you out. No, I'm not going to chew you out. Ask me a question. You want to learn? Ask me a question. And that's my say for the evening, Garrett.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you very much. Guys, as I pointed out earlier, you know, when you want to open a dialogue, you have to open a dialogue. You have to let the other person speak. You have to let them speak their mind. You know, Mark and I talk a lot, you know, again, off camera and in our chats and places like that. And you know, here's the thing, guys, like I said, my experiences are very different. I've known American history. I knew the plight that we've gone through. What I didn't know is that we were still living it. Because where I live and in my community, the people that I want around me, we're not. And then I find out that we are not the majority. But I think we are. I think we're the majority in here. And I think we need to start acting like it. Okay? Because I'm not like Mark. I'm going to preach at you. I don't care. I'm going to, because that's not the community that we are. And we need to act like the community that we really are, and that's diverse. Thank you, Mark, for sharing your story, for sharing your insights, for sharing your experience, and for always sharing your wealth of knowledge with me, and I appreciate that very, very much.
Museum of African American History, Washington, D.C. Go.
Awesome. Loving it. Okay, that was the last word from Mark B. Lee. Let's go to Jeff Carroll. Jeff, final thoughts for the evening. There haven't been any questions. They're listening intently, man. They're listening. So let's let final thoughts, my man.
I really am don't know what to say because give you an example. We're in the middle of battle, right? I'm not one of the leaders. I'm a follower with his own mind. I just came out of a coronavirus quarantine where conspiracy theorists were going crazy. You know, one of the complaints that I have as a former, whatever you want to call, Black Lives Matter leader type of person myself, is that Black Lives Matter doesn't have a leader, right? It's just a hashtag. And we watched that hashtag get circumvented by Antifa, you know, white radicals, right? And they really don't, they're not Black leaders. They're white people that are, you know, more aggressive around certain things. And, you know, we question whether they're even out for the same things as Black people. My suggestion is really just keep your open mind. You use your logic. Take this time to learn, listen, and accept change. It's just like changing your diet. I'm not trying to make anybody go cold turkey, right? Of course, I'm in the reparations conversation. That's not cold turkey. But what I'm saying is, I would like for us to make a lifestyle American change. So I want people to understand as much as what they're doing, but don't stop from doing it. I want you to learn and take this time. We don't really have any social events. I have a fraction of the comic conventions scheduled. So even if the quarantine is down, I don't have anything to do until October. So we have time that we can take to pick up a book, to talk to somebody. I saw one of the protests where they have those counter protests, and I really hate counter protests because they're not counter protests. They're agitators, instigators, and trying to make a fight happen. And I saw one where the two sides were yelling at each other. And the next thing you know, they started hearing what each other was saying. And the next thing you know, they started listening more to each other. And before long, they were talking. And that's what we need. We need conversation. One of the things that, you like to say, you push the envelope, right? Okay, here's what I push the envelope. If you've looked on my Facebook page, I said, we really got to get to the core of this. We're not talking about a dislike, right? Because racism isn't about I don't like you. Racism, the graduated word, is also white supremacy, right? So when you get in touch with a white supremacist, what is a white supremacist? A white supremacist is a person that's fearful of Black people. They're fearful. Like, the writer Jonathan Mayberry?
Not personally, no.
Okay, V Wars. He's another mentor of mine. I was introduced to him by another mentor, the late L.A. Banks. They're both out of Philly, and they were in a group called the Liars Club. He talked to me right in Tampa, right? This past October, my film Death Pledge was screening. And he told me about the real eugenics program and how his father was a grand wizard in the Ku Klux Klan in Pennsylvania. I can't make this up. He said, Black people don't understand how deep the hatred and fear goes. And so for me, if there is that level of fear, right, that I barely can imagine, and I have a wild imagination, right? How do we get through that fear? Well, getting to know people. I don't want your white wife. I'm not trying to do what you did to us. I think it is inhuman to rip a baby out of a woman's belly. Just because I was the victim of Dexter doesn't make me become Dexter or Hannibal Lecter or whatever the worst slave master was, that lady in New Orleans that they always talk about, the American Horror Story. I've never heard that. There's no science to that thinking that what white people did to Black people on the plantation is what Black people will do to white people. So their fear is illogical. Bravo to the intelligent white people, like my first best friend, right? I had a white best friend, Lee John. We still friends to this day. But bravo to those people who are able to see past the stupidity of fear. You fear what you don't know. How do you get over fear? Well, you get to know people. Read my story. Go to see movies with diverse cast, and understand it's not about things. Donald Trump tweeted about Insecure. Hilarious, right? Watch Insecure. I'm trying to learn my African culture. They have this movie on Netflix from South Africa, Blood and Water. I'm watching that series because I want to learn my African culture. I watch Queen Sona, right? I want to get to know African culture. So that's how I get to know these people, because I read the books, I taste their food, I go to their events, and I intermingle. These inbred redneck. I'm not going to diss rednecks like that, but the inbred racist, right? I'm talking about the country, the good old boys, right? Riding around in the General Lee. They have not experienced, making friends. Do what Eminem did. Meet us. We're not going to bite you. So we got bad people. I ain't going to lie. There's bad people. There's bad Chinese people. There's bad Jewish people. There's good and bad in everybody. But we don't have, there's no black equivalent to the Ku Klux Klan. At best, Black Lives Matter is a defensive group. The Black Panthers ain't running around kidnapping no white person and lynching them to an unk. It's never happened, right? They don't do it in Africa, okay? So let's just
But that's the thing. You hit it right on the head, man. Get to know a person. A person. Don't get to know a color. Don't get to know.
Right.
Get to know a person, and because that's really where it's at, isn't it? The psychology behind hatred is simple. They can teach it in college classes. You can major in it probably, but the psychology behind hatred is simple. It's fear and loathing of what we call the other. And before we had in America, before we had slavery out of Africa, when a culture went into another land, they would defeat them on the battlefield and take them as slaves because they feared the other. They feared retribution. And then that happened all over the country, and it happened for 400 years to black people here in America. And it's about fearing the other. But there is no other if you get to know a person. Because there is no other. Because, despite what we have to go through today, at the end of the day, as Jeff said, there's no science behind what you're doing. There's no other. The science says this. There is one dominant hominid species on planet Earth. It's called the human race. We're called Homo sapiens. We come in all shapes, sizes, colors, the way our eyes look, the way our hair looks, how tall we are, all of that. All of that is diverse. No one is just like you. I saw a great piece of art, guys. I hope you guys will check out my personal Facebook page real quick when you get a chance. I saw a great piece of art. It was one of those, see in this picture what's not like the other. Two pictures that are identical except for one item. And they had 8 cats lined up, and you had to figure out which one was different. And I looked at that picture for about 4.5 minutes, and I realized something. No cats were the same. All 8 were different. They were all different in almost undetectable ways, but they were all 8 distinct cats. And this was going on, and I was watching the news, and the last 2 weeks was unfolding in front of me. And I thought to myself, a simple children's game, a simple child's game, said more about us than we can say out loud. Every one of us is different. And that is to be embraced, it is to be celebrated, and get to know a person for their differences. And man, let me tell you, there won't be any more hate. Because there's no room for hate when you get to know a person. I can dislike someone. I dislike a lot of people. And I'm sure they dislike me. But it's hard to hate those people because I have nothing to fear. I have nothing to loathe. I just don't like you.
Hey, can I say something real quick, Garrett?
Yeah, Mark, please do.
I want to make people aware that in my industry, in my career, me personally, in my office, I'm not the only African-American guy there. My partner is Jamaican. But I occasionally set up appointments with people who want to build big houses. I'm working on a 4,500 square foot one right now for a woman and her husband who has never seen me. She has no idea what I look like, but we talk on the phone and we laugh. And he's a hunter, so I built him a man cave over the garage, and I'm explaining to her, I gave him room on the wall to hang his heads, things that this woman has never seen me. This is what's been going on for literally almost, 40 years since I've been practicing architecture. That when I'm talking to somebody over the phone, of course, I have to set a meeting. We have to sit down and discuss what it is you want to build, yada, yada, yada. But that's what goes on in our minds, not just as a typical African-American walking down the street or driving down the road. But for myself as a professional in what I think is probably a white dominated occupation, I'm not sure of that. I have no proof. But this is what I'm in the South. I used to live in Baltimore, okay? In Baltimore, as we say, we never pronounce the T. And I moved down to below Georgia. And, I was always careful, and not careful, but curious as to what people were going to think of me after they've just spoken to me over the phone, okay? Because I know there's no way they can tell I'm Black, okay? So that's just every day in Jeff's shoes, in my shoes. Every day we get in our car, we have to wonder if we're going to return home. What kind of feeling could you guys even imagine that feels like? Every day when I walk out my front door and go to my car, I have no idea if I'm going to return home. This is common for us. Yet I am a professional and I'm damn good at what I do. But there are people out there that don't care. That's it. I'm sorry.
No, don't. Please do not apologize. That's the message tonight, guys. That's the message. Get to know people. When I first met Marc B. Lee, I was asked to call in. He was doing a podcast just before MegaCon a couple of years ago. It was the first time we ever talked. I'd never met Marc. I didn't know Marc. At the time, I was a little bit naive in my own profession. I didn't look Marc up. I was asked to call into the show. I called into the show. It was audio only. I was on my phone. I'd never seen Marc. But I made a friend, and I made a really good friend over the last 4 years. It's been now, Marc. I made a really good friend, and because we didn't look at each other for what we looked like.
Who are you again?
Yeah, I'm the guy. I'm that guy you met in that place with that other guy that time. Remember him? Yeah. Okay, that was me. Yeah. So we didn't know what we were talking to. We got to know who we were talking to. I met Jeff 4 years ago, Necronomicon. One of the things that we had in common was we sat down and we said, you know what, these problems that we seem to be the surface, that are boiling under the surface. We grew up in a generation, Jeff and I, watching Saturday morning specials and afternoon school specials, telling us to embrace one another. We grew up learning about this stuff, and we thought we were doing what we were supposed to be doing, and then all of a sudden we look around and the neighbors and the community and the people on TV, they're not doing these things. They're not doing what they told us to do when we were growing up. And that was one of the first things that Jeff and I talked about, was how ridiculous it is to see people who should know better. The arts and entertainment community, the people that we want to be, we're creators. They were telling us in the 1978, 1979, 1980, they were Saturday afternoon special telling us to ignore these things, to not to be, you're not going to be colorblind. You're going to notice, okay, look, I'm pale. Jeff is not. Marc, I don't know. Marc told me he was Black, but that was just to get on the show, I'm sure.
Butt's a little lighter than the rest of them.
And I didn't want to know that ever, but I do now, and I can't not know it.
It is.
Thank you very much for telling
We
me.
do tan.
Thank you for that. We met people, we met individuals, and we became good friends, and we've shared a lot of time on screen together. Jeff, your experience is very much like Marc's. When you go out the door in the daytime, when you go to a convention, when you go to a conference hall where you're going to talk about your books and things like that, do you have that experience when you wonder, how you're going to be received because, people just know Jeff Carroll, the name. When they see Jeff Carroll, the guy, are they going to be disappointed without ever, knowing any better?
My thing is a little different. Comic books I've stepped into as an artist, so I already have the luxury of having told people who I am, so they will know who I am before I get there, as opposed to me being a service provider, right? Not, I'm going to be writing something for you and you hired this writer, right? And then he shows up and he's Black. No, if it was that case, then sure. But no, when I'm engaging in the comic book world or film world, it's Jeff Carroll, this person. They read my bio, people know all about me, and boom. Now, even though they know I'm Black, right, that doesn't make it easier being Black because, because they know you're Black, Now you get put on as the black person on the panel, right? Then you get the
Hey, what
black,
about that?
the black question. You know what I'm saying? And then you'd be like, I don't mind because my writings have a social message, right? Or they have a social message reality in them. So I don't have a problem with that, right? I'm not writing two guns, right? I'm not writing abstract stories. All my stories may have some relevance, right? So I don't have a problem with it. But I know some black writers who be like, why I always got to be the black? I don't want to be on the multicultural panel. Don't put me on the diversity panel. Blah, blah, blah. I want to be on the writing panel. And when they put on events, they don't talk any diversity. Some of them don't want to be called black writers, right? I'm a science fiction writer. Don't tell me I'm a black science fiction writer, or blah, blah, blah. Why are you going to call your book this and that? So I understand some people have a problem with it, but I don't. I'll be on horror panel. I'll be on the B-movie filmmaker panel. I'll be on the
Yeah, well, I'm grateful to both of you for agreeing to be on this diversity panel and share your experiences with me. Because you know what? I was going to do this show. If nobody wanted to do it with me, I would have sat here and read from the multitude of notes that I took earlier. Because this is an important topic for me personally. It is important to me that always our audiences identify with the fact that the artist is a truth teller. And sometimes we're the first people to tell you the truth. Sometimes we don't tell it to you in fact and figures. We tell it to you in fiction and stories. We show it to you on film and in the movies and in comic books. We show it to you in the stories we told around the campfire. Okay? Storytellers are truth tellers. And one of my favorite writers of all time, and one of the greatest writers of all time, is Charles Dickens. And that's all he did was contemporary stories about the inequities and inequalities in the time and place he lived in. And I admire that so much. The ability to tell a story that's fictional and to share these truths with your audience. And I was going to do this panel, but when I reached out to you guys and you guys said yes. And Marc was great because, Marc and I break chops all the time. And the first thing that Marc said is, really? Is it because I'm black? And I said, and it was true. I won't show you that as a message because our message is between us. We talk about a lot of things. But
I hope you laugh.
I did. I laughed out loud, and I said, my first response was, well, no, it's because you're smart. Let's face it. No, let's face it. I want to go right out there, guys. I know that this discussion has been about minority groups, and particularly African Americans, but the largest minority in America are smart people. There are a lot of minorities. There are a lot of small groups. But one of the smallest that I've been able to identify so far are smart people.
Yeah, you're right.
And so I reached out to smart people that would have a reference to this topic. The fact that they happen to be smart black people is a bang-on bonus, everybody, because you get to hear black perspectives from smart people who work in this industry. And that was important to me. So I'm grateful to you guys for being on this diversity panel because I hope we talked about some important things tonight. We're going to let our guys go here. David, thank you for coming in here and saying hi to Marc. That's great. I want to thank all of our regulars, Terry McIver. And
We've already friended each other doing the show.
Oh, that is fantastic. David, thank you so much. And guys, talk. Have conversations. Have those messages, man. Share your insights. You know what? Some of you will have insights that are completely different than what we talked about on the show today. And if it's out of ignorance or because you don't know any better, somebody here will set you straight. I promise. And if it's out of hatred or whatever, then please don't bother messaging anybody because we don't care. In our community, one of the wonderful things that I've enjoyed about being part of the pop culture community is the open arms that everyone is embraced with. Nobody had to welcome me into this community. I could have just been the old guy that don't fit in because I don't cosplay and I write things that are not pop culture related. I write noir from the 1940s. By the way, not exactly racially diverse topic either. So I don't get to know all of those things. Okay? I write what I know, and so I don't fit into these places. But you know what? They open their arms. These people open their arms to me without regard to age, race, skin color, my family dynamic, which I will not go into today, but I will tell you I love it. Anyway, that's enough said. But yeah, Jeff Carroll, thank you so much, my man. Sid, would you go ahead and put up Jeff's links again? Jeff, let everybody know where they can find you and what you got going on right now, and then we'll kind of go around and we'll round robin a goodbye. All right, so Jeff, you're up.
My books are available on Amazon, and you can support my Kickstarters under Red, Black, and Green from RBG Promotions or Hip Hop Comics and Flicks. And that's the best way to find me. My last Kickstarter was Horror Streets Summer 2020. So you can look at that and follow my next Kickstarter starting next week.
All right. Yeah. Hey, Garrett. Can I tell them about Friday night show? Friday night? Okay. Hey, everybody, if you're still listening right now, I'm doing something new, and I kind of fumble around on new stuff, trivia shows and whatever. We're doing a live version of I guess the best I can describe it is the Newlywed Game. I have 6 couples. They will be given questions, and if they don't know their spouse well enough, I'm assuming divorce proceedings will happen immediately after the show. So join me at 7 p.m. this Friday for a version of the Newlywed Game that I think is going to be hilarious, because I got a great bunch of 12 people that's going to be on this show this Friday night. So thanks a lot, Garrett, for letting me promote that. Appreciate it. Yeah, look what you did.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can also catch Marc B. Lee. Oh, good. She put it behind. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Put it behind.
That's awesome. Okay, so you guys will see that after the show. That's great. In the meantime, also check out Marc B. Lee along with Rosemary Rose and Jerome Connor every Saturday morning for Saturday Morning Cartoons. It is a nostalgic look back at some of your favorite cartoon titles. They talk about the voice actors. They talk about the music. They talk about the cartoons. Mostly, we just talk about being kids and having fun.
And we show video.
And show videos. It's awesome. By the way, guys, just so you're aware, the only show playing on HWWS Web TV that it cannot be monetized is Saturday Morning Cartoons, because Marc B. Lee puts way too much clip in every single show. So you're going to see cartoons you haven't seen in 20 years. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I very much enjoy not making any money off of that. So, guys, check out all of Jeff's work. Jeff's been a great friend of the Hanging With Web show for 4 years now. We love having him on the show. Jeff, I can't wait to catch up with you and put you in the actual chair again to catch up with what you've been doing, my friend. We'll keep our fingers crossed, and we'll bring our masks out just in case. Guys, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to David and to Kyle and to Jen and to all of those people. If you haven't checked it out yet, go on over right now. As soon as you get done with this, check out the Kitchen Killers Wednesday night You Pick 2 poll. They'll be playing songs that you got to pick. If you voted, you got to pick. If you didn't vote, same consequences of not voting in the real world. You don't get to pick anything. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Come back later, tune in, log on, and see who we're hanging with next.
All right.